Chapter 97. But you don't understand.
With the addition of a single straight line, the following mathematical equation would be correct, and the answer does not involve changing the equals sign. 5 plus 5 plus 5 equals 550. Now, if you'll think about it for a moment, perhaps you can find the solution. 5 plus 5 plus 5 equals 550. Can you add a single straight line and make that equation correct? Okay, time's up. Did you solve it? As with most problems, once you've seen the solution to this one, it's painfully obvious. But it requires shifting your perspective. A new perspective often leads to new answers. Have you ever noticed how easily you can see the answer to a friend's problem? Why is this so? Are you that much smarter than your friend? Or is it because you have the advantage of an outsider's perspective? And yet, however right you may be, your friend often responds to your advice by saying, "But you don't understand." What your friend is really saying is, "You aren't seeing the problem from my perspective." Thank goodness you're not seeing the problem from his perspective, because from his perspective there's no solution. Take a few moments to look at your biggest problem from the perspective of an outsider. If someone who didn't understand all the complexities of the situation were examining this problem, what would he suggest? Chances are, that's your answer. Have you ever seen this definition? Crazy. Doing something you've done before and expecting a different result. Answers come most easily when we choose to embrace a new perspective. And by the way, if you add a single straight line to one of the plus signs, it becomes a 4. And you then have 5 plus 5, 45, equals 550.
It isn't that they can't see the solution, it's that they can't see the problem. G.K. Chesterton. Chapter 98. What is quality of life?
I've always been a little confused by people who say, "We moved here for the quality of life." Can quality of life be found in a geographic region? Welcome to Texas, the quality of life state. Come to Connecticut, our lives have more quality. The whole thing reminds me of the days when people would sling a guitar across their backs and hitchhike across the country in a heroic effort to find themselves. Did you ever notice that not one of these people ever returned to proclaim, "Eureka! I found me! I was hiding out in Texas, the quality of life state." I'm sure you'll agree that your quality of life has little to do with where you're living. But would you believe it has just as little to do with what you're doing? Each of us has known a simple person with a simple job who was happy. We've also known wealthy people with exciting jobs who would need to cheer up to qualify as miserable. Quality of life is not a function of where you're living or what you're doing. The quality of your life is determined by who you are being, and you can be whoever you want to be, regardless of where you live or what you do. Is the person you are being a generous person? Can compassion be found in who you are being? Are you being a true friend, a caring parent, a loving mate? These are the things that will determine the quality of your life. How rare it is to find someone who is genuine, generous, and loving, who is not also deeply contented and profoundly happy. Forget where you're living and what you're doing. The question to ask yourself is, who am I being?
Chapter 99. Joe is not your average boy.
Joseph is a weak and sickly Hungarian teenager with a dream of adventure. Rejected by the Hungarian army because of his poor eyesight and fragile frame, Joe is accepted by the Union Army of the United States and travels to America to fight in our Civil War. Miraculously, Joe survives the war and moves to St. Louis, where he accepts a job burying the dead during a cholera epidemic. 3 years later, he competes in a special election to fill a seat in the lower house of the state legislature. He wins. As a legislator, Joe is widely known for fighting corruption in city government. A lobbyist who disagrees with Joe publicly calls him a damned liar. Joe shoots him. Wounded and outraged, the man tackles Joe and wrestles him to the ground. Joe receives a large gash in his forehead from being pistol-whipped with his own gun. Joe decides the best way to fight is with words and starts a newspaper. His values, techniques, and reckless style of presentation are completely insane in the eyes of the established press. But newspapers will never be the same. In later years, Joe says, "The trouble with this business is no one gets drunk anymore." Immediately upon his return from an extended vacation, Joe is sued by the White House. A furious Theodore Roosevelt demands the retraction of a story. All of America is waiting to see what Joe will do. Trying hard not to show his fear, Joe calmly says, "Mr. Roosevelt is an episode. The press is an institution." America the Beautiful. Where else could a weak and sickly teenager take on the king of the land and win? A financial magazine recently reported Joe's family to be worth more than $1 billion, and the prizes given in his name continue to be among the most coveted literary achievements in the world. In his words, put it to them briefly
so they will read it, clearly so they will appreciate it, picturesquely so they will remember it, and above all, accurately so they will be guided
by its light. Joseph Pulitzer.
Chapter 100. 121,000 poor people.
America did not become what it started out to be, and I, for one, am glad. When Thomas Jefferson penned the Constitution in 1787, only white male landowners were given the right to vote. Poor men, Africans, Asians, Indians, and women were not entirely citizens. America was decidedly not the land of opportunity, unless you were wealthy, white, and male. The structure of society in the New World was very much as it had been in the Old World until 1886, when the Statue of Liberty arrived as a gift from the French. In all of America, there was no one among the privileged of 1886 who was willing to undertake the raising of a paltry $100,000 to assemble the Statue of Liberty. Today's America was born in 1886. The Statue of Liberty would have remained in its crates to this very day had it not been for the efforts of an immigrant from Hungary. In his little paper, The New York World, Joe Pulitzer appealed to the little people of the city to undertake the installation of the statue. Shoeshine boys, chimney sweeps, machine operators, and grocery clerks were called upon to come to the rescue. In recognition of their heroism, Pulitzer published the name of every contributor, even little kids who gave a nickel. One of the contributors was a young Jewish woman named Emma Lazarus, who wrote a poem for an art exhibition to help raise money for the statue's installation. Emma's poem closed with the following lines: "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." I'll bet you thought the government wrote that, didn't you? In the end, 121,000 people contributed an average of 83 cents each to erect what has become the most American of all symbols. As a result of his efforts to erect the monument, the circulation of Joe's little paper grew to monumental proportions as well, and Joseph Pulitzer went on to impact our nation as few men have ever done. America is truly the land of opportunity where you can become whoever you want. Who is it you want to be?
We must dream of an aristocracy of achievement, arising out of a democracy of opportunity. Thomas Jefferson.